You are now listening to Mark's Unexplained World by Mark the Medium. Available on Apple Podcast, Substack, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Prime, Podbean and most other podcast platforms. Tonight's episode is about the crop circle. So it's over to you now, Mark, for this week's crop design contest.
A crop circle, which is otherwise known as a crop formation or a corn circle, is a term first coined in the early 1980s as a pattern created by flattening crop, usually a cereal. And although crop circles have been described by the Professor of Physics at Truman State University as the sort of thing done in hoaxes, there are suggestions by fringe theorists that they come from obscure natural causes or alien origins. However, as there is no scientific evidence for such explanations, it is considered that all crop circles are made with 100% human causation. In 1991, two such hoaxers named Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley took the credit for having created over 200 crop circles throughout England in a widely reported interview. And since then, the number of reported crop circles has increased substantially. In the United Kingdom, reported crop circles are not distributed randomly across the landscape, but appear near roads, areas of medium to dense populations, and cultural heritage monuments such as Stonehenge or Avebury, with nearly half of all crop circles found in the UK in the year 2003 being located within a 15-kilometre or 9.3-mile radius of the Avebury Stone Circle, which usually appear overnight. Since becoming the focus of widespread media attention in the 1980s, crop circles have also been the subject of speculation by various paranormal, ufological and animalistic investigators, ranging from proposals that crop circles were created by bizarre meteorological phenomena to them being messages from extraterrestrial beings, along with the speculation that they may have a relation to ley lines. Greetings, Unexplainers. Thank you for tuning in once again and listening to this week-bending episode of Mark's Unexplained World. My name is Mark Hughes. I am a medium, a ufologist, a true crime buff, a man with a very dark and disturbed sense of humour who cannot only tell when his wife is lying by looking at her, but he can also tell when she is standing. But just to give you a better idea of who I am and what I do, every week, usually on a Friday night, though occasionally on a Saturday, allowing for bank holidays and busy weekends, I do a podcast on the many wide and various subjects that fall under the Unexplained banner. These include ufology, hauntings, disasters, and all sorts of other paranormal phenomena, including true crime, unsolved crime, serial killers, the darker side of some past celebrities, and the occasional missing person that often goes unnoticed. So if you are listening to this show on YouTube, please give us a review or an opinion of the episode's subject that I can reply to. A thumbs up, subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell. Or if you are listening on any of the other podcast platforms, again, give us a like and a follow. And if you get a few minutes, perhaps you might like to check out my social media groups and pages, including Facebook, Instagram and TikTok, to mention a few, which are filled daily with all things unexplained and crime. I'll put the links to some of my socials in the description. In this episode, I'm going to tell you about the grain-crushing story surrounding the crop circle. And this week's necessary disclaimer. Well, unless you are a piece of grain who does not like to be squashed, this episode is pretty much a PG show. However, as usual, you do listen at your own discretion. But remember, not only are all the opinions and comments made strictly my own, but the facts of the case will always remain. I also apologise if I pronounce anything incorrectly. My English, although it is my first and only language. It was only the other day that I found out that my computer was getting drunk by taking too many screenshots. But anyway, let us get back to the story. The first ever recorded crop circle was actually reported back in 1678, with the events going something like this. According to the story, two men, a farmer and a crop mower, were arguing about the cost of harvesting the farmer's oat field, and as the mower's asking price was ridiculously high, the farmer decided to storm off, swearing that the devil himself should harvest the crop. Then, later that night, a dazzling light lit up the oat field, and in the morning the farmer discovered perfectly cut round circles in his crops. So, being somewhat disturbed, and realising that he was now wearing a soiled pair of underpants at the sight of the neatly mowed circle in his land, which he figured must be the devil's work, he then abandoned any attempt to harvest the field ever again. The only real difference between this and the normal common or garden crop circle that we know today was that the crops in this instance were cut as opposed to being bent over. Come forward a few hundred years, and in an 1880 letter to the editor of the British weekly scientific journal called Nature by the amateur scientist John Rand Capron, he describes how several circles of flattened crops in his field were formed under suspicious circumstances, which were possibly caused by, and I quote, cyclonic wind action. Continuing, and again I quote, as viewed from a distance, circular spots. They all presented much the same character, viz. A few standing stalks as a centre, some prostrate stalks with their heads arranged pretty evenly in a direction, forming a circle around the centre. And outside that circular wall of stalks which had not suffered. And come forward again by approximately 50 years, and in 1932 the archaeologist named Dr. Elliot Cecil Kirwin observed 4 dark rings in a field at Stroughton Down near Chichester, but could only examine one, saying, and I quote, a circle in which the barley was lodged or beaten down, while the interior area was very slightly mounded up. And in 1963, Sir Patrick Moore described a crater in a potato field in Wiltshire that he considered was probably caused by an unknown meteoric body, along with several other circular and elliptical areas where the wheat had been flattened in nearby wheat fields, showing evidence of spiral flattening, which he thought could have been caused by air currents from the impact, since they all led towards the crater. And the astronomer Hugh Ernest Butler also observed similar type craters, saying that they were likely caused by lightning strikes. On a very quick but interesting side note here, and for those of you who may be too old enough to remember, Sir Patrick Moore was an English amateur astronomer who attained prominence in that field as a writer, researcher, radio commentator and television presenter. During the 1960s, in these swamp reeds and sugarcane fields in Tully, Queensland, Australia, and in Canada, there were many reports of both UFO sightings and circular formations. For example, on the 8th of August in 1967, 3 circles were found in a field in Duhamel, Alberta in Canada, with the Department of National Defence investigators concluding that although they felt the circles were artificial, they couldn't say either who made them or how they were made. But the most famous case is that of the 1966 Tully saucer nest in Queensland, Australia, when a farmer said he witnessed a saucer-shaped craft rise 9 to 12 metres or 30 to 40 feet from a swamp and then fly away. And when the farmer went to investigate the location, he found a nearby circular area 10 metres long by 8 metres wide, where the grass had been flattened in clockwise curves to water level within the circle. But not only that, on closer inspection, he also noticed that all the reeds within that circle had been uprooted from the mud. However, the local police officer, the Royal Australian Air Force and the University of Queensland all concluded that it was most probably caused by natural causes like a downdraft, a willy-willy, more on what that is shortly, or a water spout. And in 1973, just 7 years later, G.J. Odgers, who was the Director of Public Relations of the Department of Defence at the Air Office, wrote to a journalist saying that the saucer was probably just debris lifted again by a willy-willy. On an interesting side note here, and I am sure some of you are keen to know, like I was, a willy-willy is another name for a dust devil that is also known regionally as a dirt devil, which is a strong, well-formed and relatively short-lived whirlwind. Its sizes range from small, say half a metre wide and a few metres tall, to large, which is more than 10 metres wide and more than half a mile high, with the primary vertical motion being upwards. Dust devils are usually harmless, but they can, on rare occasions, grow large enough to endanger both people and property, and are comparable to tornadoes in that both are a weather phenomenon involving a vertically orientated rotating column of wind. Most tornadoes are associated with either a large apparent circulation or the mesocyclone on the back of a supercell thunderstorm, but dust devils, or willy-willies even, form as a swirling updraft under sunny conditions during fair weather, and so rarely come close to the intensity of a tornado. The name willy-willy itself is an Australian term, and the origin of the name is believed to be from the Aboriginal language of the Yinji-Bandi or the Wemba-Wemba. So now you know. After this first short break, in part 2 we will look at the continuing history of the crop circle and a couple of hoaxers who came forward to interact with the press and media.
Ghost Planet Network, broadcasting from the other side. Ready to tune in to terror? The Ghost Planet Network is your new home for original paranormal content, streaming straight from beyond the veil. We have got it all: spine-tingling stories, chilling documentaries, and real paranormal investigations from the world's most haunted hotspots. Perfect for believers, skeptics, and anyone who loves a good scare. Join the paranormal TV revolution. Get unlimited access for just £12 per year. Tune in now. Email us at neil.hapra@gmail.com to sign up. That is neil.haprc@gmail.com.
A majority of crop circle reports have appeared and spread since the late 1970s, as over time a multitude of circles began appearing throughout the English countryside. And it was around this time when the researcher Colin Andrews began to document the phenomena, with him eventually leading to a co-authored book in 1989 with the fellow researcher Pat Delgado, who is an advocate of paranormal explanations of crop circles, called Circular Evidence, which is a work that compiled and photographed early crop formations. And in the late 1980s, after the media started to report crop circles in both Hampshire and Wiltshire, the phenomenon became pretty much a household occurrence. In 1991, two self-professed pranksters named Doug Bower and Dave Chorley made headlines by saying that it was them that had started the crop circle phenomena back in 1978, adding that by using simple tools consisting of a plank of wood, a rope and a baseball cap fitted with a loop of wire to help them walk in a straight line, and to prove their case, they made a crop circle in front of journalists. Pat Delgado, who, if you remember, was the co-author of the aforementioned book with Colin Andrews, was then brought in to examine Bower and Chorley's handiwork, declaring it authentic before it was revealed to him that it was indeed a hoax. Ouch, that's gotta hurt. Inspired by the Australian crop circle accounts from 1966, meaning the aforementioned Tully saucer nest in Queensland, Australia, of course, both Doug Bower and Dave Chorley claim to be responsible for all the crop formations made prior to 1987, and not only that, but they also claim to be responsible for more than 200 crop circles between 1978 and 1991, and going by the recorded quantity of formations during that time, it means that there were 1,000 other crop circles that they weren't responsible for. However, after Doug Bower and David Chorley gave their interviews in 1991 about how they had made the crop circles, wheat formations then started appearing all over the world, with Richard Taylor from the University of Oregon writing in the membership magazine called Psychic World that, and I quote, "The pictographs they created inspired a second wave of crop artists. Far from fizzling out, crop circles have evolved into an international phenomena, with hundreds of sophisticated pictographs now appearing annually around the globe." By 2001, approximately 10,000 crop circles had been reported internationally from locations like the former Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, Japan, the United States and Canada, with researchers noting the correlation between crop circles and the recent media coverage, along with the absence of any fencing and or anti-trespassing legislation. And although farmers expressed concerns about the damage caused to their crops, the local response to the appearance of crop circles was often met with enthusiasm, with some locals taking advantage of the increased tourism, visits from scientists, crop circle researchers and individuals seeking a spiritual experience, which then consequently created a market for crop circle enthusiasts, generating bus or helicopter tours of circle sites, along with walking tours, t-shirts and books. Since the start of the 21st century, crop formations have increased not only in size, but also in complexity, that's right, with some featuring as many as 2,000 different shapes, along with some other incorporating complex mathematical and scientific characteristics. A researcher named Jeremy Northcote found that the crop circles that were made in the UK during 2002 were not spread randomly across the landscape, but tended to appear near roads, areas of medium to dense population, cultural heritage monuments such as Stonehenge or Avebury, and in areas that were easy to access, which suggested to him that these particular crop circles were more likely to be caused by intentional human action rather than by paranormal events. Another strong indication of this man-made theory was that the inhabitants of the zone with the most circles had a historical tendency for making large-scale formations, with these inhabited areas including stone circles at Stonehenge, earthen mounds such as Silbury Hill, long barrows such as West Kennet Long Barrow, and the White Horses in Chalk Hills. Just a quick side note here, and something that is worth me pointing out. In contrast to crop circles or crop formations, archaeological remains can cause what's known as crop marks in the fields in the shape of circles and squares. However, these do not suddenly appear overnight and are always in the same places every year. The scientific consensus on crop circles or crop formations is that they are constructed by human beings as hoaxes, either in advertising or art, with the most widely known method for creating them being a person or a group of people even tying one end of a rope to an anchor or anchor point and the other end to a board, which is used to crush the plants. It has also been found that it is indeed possible to bend grass without breaking it, most certainly if it has recently rained, which is a method that was used to create crop circles in Hungary in 1992. And to add to the descent of soup, as it were, skeptics of the paranormal also point out that all characteristics of crop circles are fully compatible with them being made by hoaxers. It has also been suggested that crop circles may be the result of an extraordinary meteorological phenomena ranging from freak tornadoes to ball lightning, but, as before, there is no evidence of any crop circle being created by any of these causes. In 1980, a meteorologist and physicist named Terence Meaden proposed that crop circles were caused by whirlwinds whose course was affected by the southern England hills. However, as the circles became more intricate, Terence Meaden's theories became increasingly complex, eventually blaming an electromagneto-hydrodynamic plasma vortex, with this meteorological theory becoming so popular that it was even referenced in 1991 by the late physicist Stephen Hawking, who said that corn circles are either hoaxes or formed by a vortex movement of air. However, this weather theory suffered a serious blow again in 1991 when our two corn crushers, Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley, stated that they had been responsible for making all those circles, and by the end of that same year, Terence Meaden conceded that all crop circles, even the ones that had complex designs, were indeed made by hoaxers. There are, of course, alternative explanations for the crop circle phenomena. For example, in many science magazines from the 1980s and 1990s, one could read reports suggesting that the plants were bent by something that could be a form of microwave radiation, rather than broken by physical impact, with the magazines also containing serious reports of the absence of human influence and the measurement of unusual dispersion. And while at this time it was the subject of serious research, today it is considered to be a pseudoscience. Since becoming the focus of widespread media attention in the 1980s, crop circles have been the subject of speculation by various paranormal, ufological and animalistic investigators, ranging from bizarre meteorological phenomena and messages from extraterrestrial beings, along with the speculation that they have a relation to ley lines. And on an interesting side note here, ley lines are straight alignments drawn between various historic structures, prehistoric sites and prominent landmarks, with the idea itself being developed in early 20th century Europe. Ley line believers argue that these alignments were recognised by ancient societies that deliberately erected structures along them, and since the 1960s, members of the Earth Mysteries movement, along with other esoteric traditions, commonly believe that such ley lines demarcate Earth energies and serve as a guide for alien spacecraft. However, archaeologists and scientists regard ley lines as an example of pseudo-archaeology and pseudoscience. Archaeologists also note that there is no hard evidence that ley lines were a recognised phenomenon among ancient European societies, and that attempts to draw them typically rely on linking together structures that were built in different historical periods, with statisticians having demonstrated that a random distribution of a sufficient number of points on a plane will inevitably create alignments of random points purely by chance, with skeptics also stressing that the esoteric idea of Earth energies running through ley lines has not been scientifically verified. Some paranormal advocates also believe that crop circles are caused by ball lightning, and because some of the patterns themselves are so complex, they must be controlled by some sort of entity. And other proposals for the phenomena include Gaia, asking us, humanity of course, to stop global warming and human pollution, or the collective minds of humanity through a proposed quantum field, or maybe it is an extraterrestrial being, or even God himself. Another theory, which to be honest did bring a smile to my face, is that in 2009 the Attorney General for the island state of Tasmania stated that Australian wallabies had been found creating crop circles in fields full of opium poppies, which are grown legally for medical purposes, after they had consumed some of the opiate-laden plants and then ran around in circles. After this second short break, in part 3, we will look at more paranormal theories and the folklore regarding the crop circle phenomena.
Fright Nights was established in 1999 as the first company in the world to offer overnight ghost hunt experiences to the general public, pioneering paranormal events since the last century. Fright Nights operate at hundreds of the UK's most haunted and exclusive venues. All events have their own team of experienced paranormal investigators, mediums and psychics. They have a VIP members club for regular returning guests, offering loyalty discounts and exclusive invitation-only events. They can also host private events for your family and friends. You can contact them on 07 852 998 628 or email them at office@frightnights.co.uk, or take a look at their website at www.frightnights.co.uk, where you can see the many locations they investigate and learn about them and the opportunities they have available. Hundreds of ghost hunters join Fright Nights every month for the most thrilling ghost hunting experiences they'll never forget. If you haven't been on a ghost hunt before, then why not join them to see what it's all about? Why not visit their social media sites, for up-to-date information on all the places they visit and to see what's coming up in the future. They look forward to seeing you all soon. Fright Nights, ghost hunting events. Remember, only the original will do.
In response to the belief that extraterrestrial beings in UFOs were responsible for the appearance of crop circles, the Indonesian National Institute of Aeronautics and Space, or LAPAN for short, described crop circles as man-made, with the research professor of astronomy and astrophysics at LAPAN, Thomas Jamaluddin, stating, and I quote, "We have come to agree that this thing cannot be scientifically proven." Paranormal enthusiasts, ufologists and animalistic investigators have all offered other hypothetical explanations for the crop formations. However, they have also been criticised as pseudo-science by sceptical groups and scientists, including the Committee for the Skeptical Inquiry, saying that, and I quote,
"No credible evidence of extraterrestrial origin has ever been presented."
However, there are a small number of scientists, meaning physicist Joe Hasselhoff and the late biophysicist William Levengood, who have claimed to observe differences between the crops inside the circles and the crops outside of them, citing this as evidence that they were not man-made, with William Levengood even publishing papers in the journal named Sciologia Plantarum in 1994, claiming that he had found certain deformities in the grain inside the circles that were not found in the grain outside the circles. But in 1996, the American skeptic and investigator of the paranormal, Joe Nickell, raised several objections to William Levengood's methods and assumptions, saying that, and I quote, "Until his work is independently replicated by qualified scientists doing double-blind studies and otherwise following stringent scientific protocols, there seems to be no need to take seriously the many dubious claims that Levengood makes, including his similar ones involving plants at alleged cattle mutilation sites." Joe Nickell also criticised William Levengood for using circular logic, stating, and again I quote, "There is in fact no satisfactory evidence that a single genuine," meaning a vortex-produced, "circle exists, so Levengood's reasoning is circular, although there are no guaranteed genuine formations on which to conduct research. The research supposedly proves the genuineness of the formations." Advocates of the non-human causes tend to discount on-site evidence of the human involvement as attempts to discredit the phenomena. For example, when the British science writer, journalist and businessman Matt Ridley wrote negative articles in newspapers regarding the authenticity of crop circles, he was accused of spreading government disinformation and of working for the UK military intelligence service MI5. However, Matt Riley, being the thick-skinned chap that he was, simply responded by noting how many seriologists make a good living from selling books and providing high-priced personal tours through crop fields, claiming that they have a vested interest in rejecting what is by far the most likely explanation for the crop circle phenomenon. Many researchers of the crop circle and formation phenomena have linked the modern-day crop circle to old folkloric tales to support the claim that they are not artificially produced, making the sighting of a crop circle culture-dependent, with most of them appearing in developed and secularized Western countries where people are receptive to New Age beliefs, including places like Japan. However, they do not seem to appear in other zones such as Muslim-orientated countries. One of the tales regarding early crop circles comes from a 1948 German story called The 12 Swans, in which a farmer gets up every morning and finds a circular ring of flattened grain in his field, and after several attempts at finding who the wheat-crushing culprit was, it is claimed that his son sees 12 princesses disguised as swans who take off their disguises and dance in the field. Another phenomenon, which I'll just touch on briefly, is the appearance of fairy rings, which is also known as a fairy circle, elf circle, or elf ring, or pixie ring, and is a naturally occurring ring or arc of mushrooms found mainly in forested areas, but can also appear in grasslands or rangelands. Fairy rings are detectable by what's known as sporocarps or fungal spore pods in rings or arcs, as well as by a necrotic zone, meaning a dead grass, or a ring of dark green grass with fungus mycelium being present in the ring or arc underneath. These rings can grow to over 10 metres or 33 feet in diameter and become stable over time as the fungus grows and seeks food underground, with fairy rings also being the subject of much folklore and myth worldwide, particularly in Western Europe, where they are alternately seen as hazardous or dangerous places linked with either witches and the devil, or as a sign of good fortune. The main criticism of the alleged non-human creation of crop circles is that while the lack of evidence of these origins, besides eyewitness testimonies, is absent, many are known to be the work of human pranksters, whilst others can be adequately explained as such, as it has been demonstrated that even the most complex crop circle can be created in just a few hours in the dark. The American astronomer, planetary scientist and science communicator Carl Sagan concluded in his 1995 book, The Demon-Haunted World, Science as a Candle in the Dark, that crop circles were created by Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley along with their copycats, and speculated that ufologists willingly ignore the evidence for hoaxing so they can keep believing in the extraterrestrial origins of the circles. An article published by the popular magazine Scientific American and written by the aforementioned Matt Riley, who started making crop circles in northern England in 1991, said how easy it is to develop techniques by using simple tools that can easily fool later observers, and how he mused about why people wanted to believe supernatural explanations for a phenomenon that is not yet explained. And of course, let us not forget that these days methods of creating a crop circle are now well documented on the internet. In the early 2000s, myself and the family were witness to an amazing crop circle that appeared on the hillside in a farmer's field in Hampshire, nearby a location that we visited almost weekly at the time. We visited the site for many years, but it was just at that one time when the crop circle appeared, and although it was never seen again, it was an incredible experience that I shall always remember. In 2009, the Guardian newspaper reported that crop formation activity had been waning around Wiltshire, mainly because crop circle makers preferred creating promotional circles for companies that paid well for their efforts. So make of that what you will.
Thank you all for taking the time out to listen to this episode of Mark's Unexplained World. In our next episode, show number 177, we are going to be looking at what happened at New Mexico's Dulce base. For decades, ufologists have claimed that extraterrestrials experiment on humans with the military's help inside a secret base underneath the Archuleta Mesa in Dulce, New Mexico.
This show was written and researched by myself, Mark Hughes, and proofread and edited by Linda Hughes, though the pronunciations of all the names of places was mine. The voice actors in this episode were Mark Hughes, Linda Hughes and Denise Poolar, with special thanks to Neil Packer and the staff at the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Centre in Hinckley, and of course a big thank you to everyone for listening. We never run out of ideas here at the office for Mark's Unexplained World podcast, but if you do know of any other intriguing stories under the Unexplained banner, including ufology, hauntings, disasters, and any other sort of paranormal phenomena as well as true crime, unsolved crime and missing people, just drop me a direct message and I'll see what I can do. I'll also include the name of the person who suggested the idea in the end credits of the podcast, if they're happy for me to do so, of course. And again, just to add, if you are listening to this show on YouTube, please give us a review and a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And if you are listening on any of the other podcast platforms, again, give us a like and a follow. I thank you in advance. Mark's Unexplained World, because there's more to the paranormal than meets the third eye. And remember guys, keep it real, because being real is better than being perfect. No AI was used or harmed in the making of this or any other episode of Mark's Unexplained World. This show and all its contents are covered by basic copyright of Mark the Medium.